Hello all, my name is Bart Kroon and I work for Philips. In this presentation we will present the V-PCC and MIV standards for volumetric video transmission. In immersive video we distinguish between three levels of immersion. 3DOV, also called 360-degree video or VR360, is the ability to look around, monoscopically or stereoscopically. 3DOV plus video adds to that the ability to move your head while standing or sitting on a chair, meaning that there is limited head movement. 6DOV video extends that by being able to walk around at least a few steps. For the real immersive 3DOV Plus and 6DOV regimes, there are at least two different ways to capture content. In one case, the viewer is relatively close to an object and can be looked at all sides. This is typically a person, but could also be an object. In the other case, the viewer is relatively distant from the scene and is able to look at the scene with a large field of view and from multiple angles. Consider, for instance, a sports stadium. MPEG has developed two standards that are related and they address these two situations. The common part of these two standards is called visual volumetric video-based coding, short V3C. And then the first one, the object for subjects and objects, is video-based point cloud compression. And for the final case, it's MPEG immersive video. Work on the VPC and MIV standards was concurrent, with VPCC starting earlier. VPC has been published and conformance and verification tests have been performed. V3C second edition was created to support MIV and is currently in draft international standard stage, with a final draft expected in January. MIV first edition is currently at final draft international standard stage, with publication expected in January, and work on conformance and verification tests is ongoing. The carriage of V3C data first edition has been published, and now Celine will introduce VPCC.
Hello everyone, I am Celine Guet from Digital, and I'm very pleased to give you an overview of the VPCC technology. VPCC is the first MPEG solution to compress animated point clouds that are closed surfaces. First, what are point clouds? It is a set of 3D points with no relation between them. They are not ordered. Each point is described by its geometry, X, Y, Z, and its attribute like texture, reflectance, transparency, or any attribute depending on the application, with no idea how close or far a point is from its neighborhood. While 2D video offers a unique view of the world, point clouds offer a representation of the world in 3D by providing up to 6 degrees of freedom by translation and rotation around the three axes. Thus, one can see an object from anywhere in the 3D space. Several use cases are handled on point cloud compression inside MPEG. Among them, three main use cases are identified and dedicated to dynamic point clouds with dense shapes. The first one is the real-time 3D immersive telepresence. Today, the 3D capture and reconstruction enable real-time generation of realistic 3D representations for 3D telepresence, enabling communication between people. The current sanitary period shows us how human is important and highlights how it's precious to keep contact between people. Point clouds are an efficient representation as they can be seamlessly transmitted and rendered in 3D virtual worlds, enabling a convergence between real and virtual realities. The second use case concerns content AR/VR viewing with interactive parallax in order to provide to end users equipped with head-mounted display an immersive experience for viewing specific contents like large fields of view movies. By providing the interactive parallax, the comfort of the end-user visual experience is greatly improved. The use case is very much related to the previous one, except that it doesn't require a real-time production of the source, but rely on a more sophisticated production workflow. Here, point clouds may be transmitted as a part of the total content. They could also correspond to a range of the viewport that average the end-user head. The third use case concerns point cloud capture or sports events like basketball, baseball for free viewpoint playback and interaction on mobile devices and TV. The user can choose the angle of view he prefers and can change from one time to the next. This requires that the point cloud data can be streamed or stored in an interoperable manner. Also, this requires a good compression efficiency and the possibility to download progressively streams in order to target different devices following their own capabilities. All such point clouds may contain huge quantity of points. As an example, for this point cloud, one frame of point cloud contains 800,000 points. A video of this point clouds will therefore requires 1,500 megabits per second to transmit it uncompressed. So it is quite expensive if you want to transfer such data at a good quality. Compression of point clouds is a key for the adoption of the format in the industry. Let's have a VPCC codec overview now. As VPCC objects are closed surfaces where distribution of points is not sparse, the basic main idea is to use 2D projections and encode these projections using classical 2D video encoders. So, we segment the uncompressed point cloud in sub-point clouds, project them on a 2D plane. To make it easier, the projection planes are limited to the 6 planes of a cube, with the possibility to add the diagonal planes. For each projection, called patch, we keep the geometry, which is represented by the distance of the point to the plane and the color of the corresponding point. Patches are projected only once, each in the most appropriate direction. All patches information is gathered into one packed image. So, we have a geometry image, which is the depth map obtained during the projection, a texture image. But since some part of the image is not occupied by a projected point, we need the information of occupancy. This binary information indicates if the point is present or not in the final 3D representation. In addition to this 3 information, some metadata used for the 3D reconstruction are entropy coded. At the end, all these images are gathered into 2D videos that are well suited for classical video compression. We took advantage of the temporal interprediction of video encoders. To give you some number where we are today, we said we need 1,500 megabits per second to transmit such point clouds in the uncompressed domain. Today, with VPCC, we compress the sequences to an average of 7 megabits per second. So, we reach a compression ratio of around 1 in 300, which is acceptable over the network while keeping a good quality for the user perception. By mirroring effect, the VPCC decoder is typically a set of 3 video decoders, one for geometry, one for the attribute, and one for the occupancy map. These video decoders are like they are deployed today, with no modification, plus a light parsing of metadata to be able to reconstruct the point cloud. A specificity of VPCC is that there are 2 conformance points, named A and B, since some companies were supporting using their own tools for the reconstruction, while others want to guarantee the visual quality of the reconstructed point cloud. To summarize, VPCC is the first MPEG codec for point cloud compression. It defines several tools that preserve the reconstruction and maintain the fidelity to the original point cloud and provide a bitrate compatible with a typical network capability. VPCC standard is now available. Its deployment on the mass market is made easier as it relies on 2D conventional video codecs. Several demonstrations of the VPCC decoder have already been done on smartphones of the market, proving that the standard is ready for deployment for public application. These demos were based on HEVC hardware decoders, and the VPCC architecture will directly benefit of coming next video codecs like VVC and take advantages of good compression ratios. Thank you for your attention, and I let now the floor to Bart Kroon from Philips for the next section on MIV.
Let me now provide an overview of the MIV standard. We will present three use cases for MIV. The first use case gives you the best view on a 2D display. The content is captured with a rig of small cameras aimed at the center of the scene. And there will be less definition of the players compared to VPCC, but there will be a larger field of view that also includes the public. And the user is able to change the point of view using a mouse, finger control, or any other form of interaction. This is valid for narrative content, especially sports content. Think about replays, and it may work well in combination with 2D video. The second use case that we present, virtual reality, was the first use case that was considered for MIV. Compared to VR360, by having depth information, 3.+, it is possible to have a more natural viewing. There is more comfort, especially with VR360. If one rotates your head in a tilting fashion, it can be quite comfortable. And also for monoscopic VR360, objects that are nearby might have a size conflict. They might look very large, for instance. And this is solved by 3.+. This is not about providing a large viewing zone, it's about providing a natural view. The final use case that we present for MIV is that of a light field display. There are many forms of light field displays, and this is an active area, and we expect that this will be growing. And what MIV can provide is a virtual window where you're basically looking through the display as if the display is a window. And if you would change your head, then you get a different perspective in a very natural way. This use case is maybe not relevant on the short term, but it is a use case that MIV will be able to support very well. I will now explain the MIV codec at a high level. The first step is the input of the codec, the source material. This first example is a computer-generated scene with 15 cameras. They are all 360 degrees video with depth information. And from this it's possible to render intermediate views with high accuracy, as can be seen on the left. On the left, the virtual camera is changing both position and orientation. So this is just one example. This is another example with 16 physical cameras, and the depth has been estimated. And the virtual camera can be moved anywhere in this virtual window to find the intermediate perspective. This is the MIV Codec Model. The input is either multi-view plus depth or multiplane images, having texture and transparency. The MIV encoder creates a V3C bit stream with MIV extensions. The decoder renderer is able to reconstruct the source data, making it a symmetric codec. In addition, the renderer is able to synthesize any intermediate viewpoint within the viewing space that is defined by the source data. Like with VPCC, the V3C bit stream contains video atlases with patches. With MIV, these patches are taken from the source video data. This is a diagram of the MIV encoder architecture. From the source data, views are pruned, meaning that redundant pixels are identified and removed. From the remaining pixels, patches are formed, and these are packed into video atlases. On the bottom left, an example of the geometry and attribute video data is shown. This video data is encoded with a regular 2D video codec, for instance HEVC or VVC. View parameters and atlas data are encoded in a separate subbit stream, and finally all subbit streams are multiplexed. A key benefit of the MIV standard is that the decoder does not require specialized hardware. The MIV bit stream can be demultiplexed into the multiple subbit streams, and then the MIV part, the atlas data and the view parameters, can be decoded on the CPU with relatively low effort. And for the video decoder, existing hardware will be available. The rendering is then performed on the GPU typically. This bitstream structure is shared with VPCC, and MIV can use any video codec that is supported by the system. and it also supports video aspects such as random and partial access. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that there is a second video on use cases and implementation demonstrations of MIV and V-PCC. Thank you for listening. Obrigado.